Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Archived Conversations. My name is Mia, and today we have a very special guest, Elle.
Singular claps of one person.
I always love doing that.
It's just like my subconscious. It's okay. Feels like home.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
I love that. And please introduce yourself to the people.
Yeah, so I am Elle. I am transmasculine, non-binary, check the boxes of oppression. I am also Mexican-American. I grew up in a small town, which is like a really big part of my identity because it shaped like a lot about me, which makes me like an even more scary leftist because I know how to like berate people like a conservative, but with like the knowledge of like left-leaning politics. So those are core parts of my identity, I think, that inform my work. And as for my work, literal work, I have been teaching art for about a decade, which makes me sound old. It's a third of my life.
Yep.
And so that's been really important to me and informed my work because a lot of the times I would make work in those studios where I was teaching for my classes. So that work that I was making at that time was mostly three-dimensional work. There was ceramic, glass, and metal, along with some other multimedia things. And those classes weren't super affordable, so that inspired me to take up other things that are more affordable for not just myself to make, but for others to learn, so that it was a more sustainable practice as an instructor to give someone the tools to create in a certain way and then be able to purchase those items later and not have to go find another studio. So that's one soapbox. In terms of making work, currently I am doing lino block prints, linoleum block cut prints, lino cut prints. You know, there's so many hashtags that can be used for that specific medium. And I am working with that material specifically because of its affordability for customers as well as myself. So things that I'm really focusing on right now in terms of my quote-unquote career is sustainability and accessibility in financial and language-based ways.
Sweet. Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely feel you too on the small town being a part of your identity. I feel that's so hard. Especially like I was just talking to a friend about this too, because she's in a town up in Michigan right now, like a small town up in Michigan, and we were talking about how like we're kind of surrounded by like with lack of a better word.
I'm always
redneck
egging people on, like, say it. Call them Hicks. I know.
Yeah.
I seen them.
No,
I lived with them.
I was.
Yeah.
You know, to an extent, you know, just being from that town. But yeah, so I totally feel that. It's like I love like knowing kind of like how their minds are operating and then like taking what I know and kind of pushing it against what they're like talking about when it comes to politics, because it's like you and me both want the same thing.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
You've just been told the way to achieve that in a very specific way.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
that is not actually to your benefit, which always like throws them for a loop because they're like, but like, you know, everything I do is for my benefit because I am an individual.
Cool, man.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, even with my dad, I like confuse the hell out of him because like, oh, would you rather, like this is one argument that we got in one time. He's like, would you have rather had Hillary Clinton back in 2016? And I was like, where do I even begin? It's just like the whole thing of like that choosing a team, you know, like us against them, and it's just like we should
reinforcing that binary.
All of that. So
I would say I'm like scarier than a liberal.
Yeah, totally.
Like you think that you
I was
know
like, I
what
am
you're
not.
getting into, but it's deeper.
I hate them all,
and it's scary.
I want to burn it all. Yeah. It doesn't have to be. Take my hand. I'll show you the way.
I have so many like conservative or like have originated from conservative friends and family that I know they'll try to like say something specific towards me under the guise of like, you know, people that think or feel this way. And I'm like, bitch, I know you talking about me. And actually, I think and feel the same way that you do about those people.
Exactly.
Like, you know,
and then they're confused. They're like, what?
They're like, I thought that was your team. And I was like, no.
That's not. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about basically how you got to this point. You're now making work under the name of UPPERCUTT, and I wanted to kind of ask you how you kind of got to that point. So before UPPERCUTT, like, how did you, like, we can go all the way back to childhood if you want. You said it's not a therapy session. We don't have to go there completely.
Well, I like to say when I was a young warthog.
Oh yeah. Well, when you were a young warthog.
Yes.
Yeah, just tell me like kind of how you got to where you to UPPERCUTT, and then we'll talk about that.
All right, cool. Well, adjacent to therapy, I feel like talking about your work is a lot like giving a summary of your traumas to your next therapist. Like, you kind of get used to like the PowerPoint presentation of like, once upon a time there was innocence, and then there was destruction, and then, you know, I figured out what to do with that destruction. And, you know, I definitely don't want to hold up the trope of like the struggling artist, but like, who's not struggling? Like, what are you going to do with that struggle at the end of the day? Like, how are you going to expel that from your body, from your brain, whatever? Like, if you don't get that energy out, it's just going to be festering up in you. And like, I spent enough of my time doing that.
Yeah.
So if I was literally just say from childhood, because literally one of my designs, my dad saw and was like, oh, this is just like this is exactly what you made as a child. And I was like, that's concerning. But also, like, that should have been a red flag, y'all. But like, I acknowledge that, you know, the spaces we grew up in and stuff, that wasn't a thing that was on anyone's radar. But I think it's interesting that there's still definitely ties of like the core reason I was creating even as a child. My creations were always macabre. It was always violent.
Too.
It was always
too.
like, you know, I would do these like little comics of animals. There was always animals of predator and prey, of course, and like villain victim, that like duality. And not to talk about personal trauma, but, you know, if you have physical harm, you know, and you don't know where to point that external blame, it just comes back to yourself as like, oh, I am the harm. Like, me existing in this body is harmful to me. And, you know, there's gender things with that, there's trauma with that. So I really saw, like, looking back now at my work, that I was trying to figure out what role I was playing in that ecosystem I was creating on paper. So I had definitely a lot of canines, you know, outside of being a pup as an adult. I definitely, you know, those sources come from somewhere. And before anyone gets creeped out, not all things to do with, you know, stuff outside of sexuality is sexual.
Yes.
I'll just say that.
Yes.
So yeah, I definitely had themes of like revenge, misfortune. There would be, you know, these long dramas of like these horrible things that would happen, and then you think there was a glimmer of hope, and then, oh no, you got you, now more people are dead than what you thought were going to be at the beginning. So it was just very existential all the time. But something that I always go back to is like the power of language. Me being mostly fluent in English at all, and like still not being able to pronounce stuff very well because of my southern like hard vowel accent. I think it's really important to give people the power of language, because it's less of, you know, creating boxes for people to check and mark and see themselves in, and it's more of finding that word that you didn't know existed that surmised everything you were experiencing. So if little L could have known the word existentialism, he would have been like, absolutely, that is me. Anyway, back to the carnage. So like, I always was like, okay, there's oppression, there's perpetrators of oppression, and then there's people that are safe. But those people aren't safe for others, they're just safe from the harm. You know, like they're safe for themselves, but they're not providing that safety for others. So at a small age, you know, growing up around rednecks and like a lot of conservative Christian ideology and such, I thought that I was apolitical for a long time because I was like, I do not know, I don't care about
none of this.
None of this makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't see the point in investing my energy in these debates. Like,
yeah.
And it was the same with like history. Like, I'm notorious for being butt at history. And I'm like, do you think I saw myself in any of those history books?
Yeah,
no. Like,
exactly.
why was I invested? I didn't care about these old men with the wooden teeth and the wigs and
Seriously.
shit. I'm getting off track.
No, you're not. Not at all.
I'm coming
you're
back.
Not at all.
I'm coming back. All right, childhood. Jump into adolescence. So I met. I went to 3 high schools, and the reason why I switched to 3 was because of literally like self-segregation in the first one. Second one was in the small town I came from, so anybody that knew my last name had like an automatic assumption and reputation tied to that. Which, you know, obviously wasn't positive. And I took that on as like, oh, sacrifice. Like, if I can be safe, I can make other people safe. And it became that, you know, that indoctrination of like having to be Christ-like and sacrifice yourself for everyone, for the good of everyone. So I'm very mindful of that mentality in kids when I interact with them now, of like, you get to be protected too. You don't have to protect everybody. Okay, little one. Okay, doing the inner work child, trying to talk to this kid. And yeah, so I ended up switching to my last high school for the art program. So that was my saving grace of like, okay, I can't get out of these cycles. I don't want to be what I see around me all the time. So how can, like, I have to find some way, some superpower of mine to validate my existence in another space where there's more resources, where there's more programming. And so I applied, and like everybody in the Tampa area knows Blake High School. So I got in there as a magnet student, which I think is funny. Quick side note, like people will be like, oh, fucking magnet schools, like they're just like gentrifying the school. I'm like, bitch, do you think I was gentrifying the school? Like, I had nothing. I came there and gave them like what I hope was talent. Like, I had nothing. I had no stake in the game. So even living that experience of like privilege and oppression, of like being privileged enough to go to this magnet school but still be seen as like some podunky, ignorant ass kid, was, you know, there was so much duality to that. And
confusing.
So I was like at the school and I was like, wow, this is so cool. I met this amazing teacher that's now my coworker, which is weird. And she inspired me. I was like, I want to be just like this woman. She does ceramics, so clearly in order to be this woman, I too need to do ceramics for the rest of my life, and that will, you know, hit me to nirvana. Like, I will get there. I will supersede all my past stuff. So I unwittingly went into school as a ceramics major. Went to a couple of different schools. I won't go into that because that would be its own episode.
I know. I feel you. I transferred schools 3 times.
And like going to school for art is like its own beast. And again, the privilege and oppression within that, because a lot of creatives that don't go to college, much like anybody else that doesn't go to college and can see like the obvious fluke that it is, they want to shit on the people that fell for it. Like, they want to be like, oh, you think you're so smart and you're so good? I'm like, bitch, I said nothing like that. You saying that about me.
Exactly.
I did not give you that impression. Trust me, I know how I come off. I did not like come up in there with like, you know, a puffed out chest and whatnot.
And snobby.
And I'm like, I definitely met them. I know they exist, but please do not throw me under that monolith as well. Because I'm not trying to like enforce that kind of like hierarchy or ego.
Nope.
And so like I'm constantly like, again, villain, victim, thinking about privilege and oppression without knowing those words. So I was going to do performance art, actually, because at the end of my time in school, you know, I experienced with different like mediums and stuff. They were all 3-dimensional. I'm a very like tactile person, horrible at technology. You know, I give every boomer a run for their money when they throw a millennial assumption at me, because I'm like, sir, my mom had to teach me how to use Roku. Like I am not the one literally that you can throw those assumptions on. So I, you know, was teaching ceramics for a long time, different ages, different abilities, and I loved it. I didn't love it as like a medium that spoke to me anymore, though. I loved it as a medium that spoke to other people. So I saw myself more as like a mediator of that experience, and that was like my flow state. Like that was like my true creativity, because I also minored for a short period of time in communications. And so words and like understanding like social cues, which is its own thing, neurotypically, is like a whole field of study that I think is just super fascinating because of where I grew up. Like thinking about, how do you relate to people that are not like you at all? How do you relate to people that you once were exactly like but are now completely different? How do you relate to someone that doesn't change ever? So those are the heavy questions I'm always kind of contending with now, living back in that space where I grew up, as I am now. So, I graduated from undergrad, and at my final critique show, there was not a piece of sculpture or functional work in the room. It was just a projector with all my performances on the projector as like video. And I definitely credit like my immersion into video and performance to like several really good friends that I met at that school. Because I feel like the biggest privilege of going to an art school is not like having the fancy paper, but getting to know like these other badass creators that are also fighting the same issues as you. Not all of them, but a lot of them are fighting the same issues of feeling stigmatized by their community because of their perceived privilege and their perceived egotism. So I went into video. I was like, I am going to be a performance artist. Fuck Abramovich, I'm gonna be the next bitch. Like, I was like ready to do it. Drove out cross country on a manic trip for some reason. I don't know what my brain was going through. I do, but it's too long. And, drove out, found a job, found all these amazing opportunities.
Like out of
Oakland.
Florida?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
in
went
Oakland.
across the whole state by myself, the whole country by myself. Went and stayed at different places. Again, like another thing that's like a privilege and an oppression. Like, it was very privileged of me to be able to take time to go do this and be like, I'm going to uproot myself and find somewhere. Anywhere's got to be better than this to do my performance work. Oppression, because I did not have money to be doing that shit. I did not think it through, but,
how long ago was that?
That was 2018.
Okay.
Yeah. So I drove my ass out there. Oakland had all these amazing opportunities, and like immediately, like within 24 hours, was in like a horrible car accident. So then the car, like it was bizarre and crazy. The thing that someone has told me that like I associate with that event the most is my brother, who said, "Would anything less have stopped you from doing what you were trying to do?" And I was pissed at the time. I was very bitter. It was like a whole other layer of existentialism. Of like, nobody's looking out for me. I made all these things happen for myself. And then my car gets flipped through an intersection. I don't have my car anymore. All my stuff was in the trunk. Had to go get my little edibles from wherever I was before, Denver, out of that trunk, out of the whatever. Like, it was very stressful. And at the time I was with somebody that lived in Iowa for school for aviation. And I was like, fuck, I either go back to Florida, my starting point, or I go to Iowa, which no one that I know of has ever been like, yo, Iowa, hands down. Of all the states, Iowa's gotta be it. That's where I'm gonna make shit happen, right? And so I was in Dubuque, Iowa, another small town that brands itself as like a burgeoning city, which are the worst because
that's so when you know that it's starting to get expensive.
Yeah, and I'm like, listen, there's nothing wrong with being a small town.
Yeah,
I can talk shit. Anybody from a small town, to be honest, can talk shit about small towns all day. But there is benefit to small towns too. It's not like small towns will forever be worse than a city. There are totally like different preferences and toss-ups. But for me, it's like, be honest. Be honest with yourself and the community about what's going on. So when I went there, I was like, fuck, I can't do anything with my body. I had like whiplash really bad.
Yeah.
And like, so I was like going through so many things interpersonally and internally.
Yeah, I'm glad you're okay, by the way.
Yeah. Well, the person I was with at the time, when they found out that I like still was able to like walk out of the car, they're like, yo, when I heard that, I was like, that tough son of a bitch. Like, would flip several times through intersection, like go flying through the air, and then so
man, yeah.
I mean, like,
I'm glad you're okay. Seriously.
Yeah, sames. But anyway, so I wasn't okay at that time. So that's actually when I started my YouTube channel.
Okay.
And that's not anything that I ever was like, yo, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna be like an entrepreneurial, influencing YouTuber. And I think also, same as with like school, you go to school for art and then everybody thinks that you're a certain way, or you have a specific goal. Which is my least favorite thing.
I know.
So same with YouTube.
What are you gonna do after?
Yeah, same with YouTube. They're like, yo, you can get so many followers. I was like, listen, I am not for everyone, and I'm fine with that. I don't like everyone. I don't want everyone to have access to me. If they don't like what I'm saying, they can kick off. Like, I don't feel that saviorism anymore. That I have to save and reach every single person. And since I'm so focused on equity, once I found out what equity was, I was like, yo, that's my shit. Like, I'm here for the people to get kicked down, not for the people that are kicking them. Like, for the detriment of the ones that are kicking, I will raise up the ones that are getting kicked on. Hands down every time. So I did YouTube, and the whole point of that from 2018 to literally just last year, because I only started a hiatus this year. So that was a number of years that I will not count. I did videos weekly to bi-weekly to monthly. And that is the most, sustainable way that I was able to balance it. Because I didn't have an art studio to create physically in space. I didn't have physical ability to like range of motion and things. But when I was in the emergency room after the accident, I didn't have service or anything, and I felt again all that like anger and anguish energy, and I was like, I can't get online, I can't scroll, I can't do anything, but I need to get it out. So I actually took out my notes app and started writing. And I was like, oh, what? I totally forgot I love writing. Like, I forgot that was a big part of me. So once I reinvigorated that, I was also doing blog posts and stuff. So I was really about language of communication again. And that was difficult because that perception of what an artist is so fine arts based.
It is
in visual fine art. They're like, don't you dare open your mouth. Your piece should speak for you. And I'm like, no. That's why I got into performance. I was like, I want you to look at me and contend with my body in space. You don't have to do that with sculpture. I can go put it in a gallery space, walk away. You can put whatever, ideas or judgments onto it. And for me, that felt icky because I was like, I already live like that in the regular world. I don't want something that I create with my hands to also go through what I'm going through. Just a lot of personalization and like animation of, something that is not sentient, but for me, creating it and giving it life was like super important. So I went back into language, words, and my whole goal with that YouTube channel was to give back the information and knowledge that I learned in very plain, simple language. English. Because I was like, if I had stayed back in my hometown all these years, like, I would not know so many things. And I don't think you have to leave to learn things. Like, the internet is a great tool. Like, if you don't have the ability financially, physically, like, there's so many barriers to moving. And I don't like when people are like, get out of your hometown. I'm like, oh, it's that easy? You just decide and then you like
want to pay for it for me?
Right? Yeah. I hate that like finiteness of like, this is how you grow as a human.
Right.
So I chose YouTube because it's the most commonly used video platform. And because people go into YouTube not thinking that it's going to get that deep. So that was like also a strategic move of like using humor and comedy and like, I don't know if there's a single video where I'm not cursing at some point, which is hard when I'm trying to apply for things.
Oh, sure.
They would like, oh yeah, I'm a professional, whatever. But that really led into the current uppercut that I'm doing now, because I regained my love for words and using words and not feeling like adding words to a visual lessened it.
Absolutely,
because I was, it was really ingrained in art school that like, it should speak for itself. this isn't...
No, I'm gonna use text.
Yeah, I'm like, but the
I'm
words, the words are... Do you know how long it took me to find these words? They are important.
They are very important, especially splicing who you are as a writer too into it. Like that, like
public speaking.
No rule.
No
rules.
The purist mentality is something that I've noticed, like, spiritually, I've been working on. Yeah. And I'm like, am I an impurist? And I got too far down that rabbit hole of, like concentration. I was like, all right, reel it back, buddy. But yeah, so then Uppercut, similar situation. Like, I didn't really have a studio. Thought I was going to have a studio. Didn't have a studio. Was teaching, but then wasn't teaching in these places. Went into grad school for art therapy with an online program. So I was doing art therapy and counseling. And then it was very white new age. Yeah. And like very obnoxious. And it was so hard. And then someone was like, did you know this school used to be a cult? And I was like, don't joke with me, bitch. And then I looked it up and I was like, there's articles that people suspected it was a cult, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward, I ended up dropping out. I was like, I could not do this.
Save yourself.
I was like, is it worth it? But then it was like, we were required to take classes in consciousness that had no scientific, psychological baseline to it.
Oh man, I'm tired.
And I was like, you cannot be pointing at these like Christian schools for like indoctrinating their students or having an additional agenda to what they're teaching and then be like, but Eastern religions, right? We can still use those for our betterment, not give credit where it's due, and be like, but this isn't Christianity, so it's not an agenda. We just want you to find your highest consciousness, invite all the light beings into the space, choose a light being, become the light being, like shit like that. And I was like, no. So I quit that this year.
Good for you.
I also had almost an internship. Well, I started an internship that ended up not being for me. I quit that as well. Yeah. So I've also been reclaiming quitting this year. Yeah. As like, that is something to be proud of.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
And so since I quit those things, I invested more of my time into the Uppercut stuff. And like my first few little batches I whipped out was like, I'm just gonna I'm gonna make this beautiful, and I was like, why do I have to make everything some visually stimulating thing that speaks for itself with no words? I'm just doing words. This would be a cool symbol or sign or to go with it to like emphasize like this alternative definition of these words. And I've like recently realized I was like, on top of pupness, wordplay. Like that's gotta be a thing somewhere, somehow. Like that is my jam. Yeah. So Uppercut has become my new like passion project, I guess. Yeah. And thankfully, weirdly enough, it's been like the most financially lucrative, which I was not anticipating or expecting, because with that, quitting that internship and stuff, because I had signed up for the summer, I had missed out on some teaching opportunities for the summer. Yeah. So I had to make that money back somewhere, somehow, if I didn't have those teaching gigs anymore. So, so my whole intention, I accidentally fall into passion projects. Yeah. But then once I find out where I'm at and like get my bearings, I'm like, okay, let's find the intention or the reason why I'm doing this. And so with this, I had done markets with my ceramic stuff, my metal stuff, my glass stuff. It was a pain in the ass. Because I had to pack everything so fragilely, took up so much space, and then you gotta take this big ass thing to a market, see if anybody gets it. They don't want it, okay, take it back. And then the day you're like, nobody's gonna buy it, someone buys it, and you don't have the right box or packaging or what, like you have to, there's so much that you have to pre-plan. Yeah, and I was like, seriously. I'm tired of fragile, breakable, expensive things, because like I can't afford to buy the things that I'm selling. Yeah. And I am not for the people, like I'm like a revolutionary, but like I am for the people that don't have money. Yeah, so, me too. I feel that. So that's why I started making things that were cheap, because I was like, I feel like accessibility, financial accessibility, and accessibility to ideas and concepts and language is important too. So yes, I'm gonna stop there because that was like half an hour. No, yeah,
you're totally good. Yeah, I feel that, especially with the accessibility thing, which also makes it hard because you're like, I've had the same thoughts of like, I want to sell things that like I would be able to afford and stuff like that. And I eventually found like the happy medium of like having a few things that maybe were like original and like more expensive, and then I'll have a sticker that's like $3, or I'll have a mini zine that's $1 and stuff like that. But yeah, that was always like the hardest thing for me too when I did markets a lot a couple years ago, like as my main source of work. But yeah, it can be a lot of work.
I say that I pick my struggles. I'm like, look, we're all handed struggles. I'm like, but when I have an option to pick, I am going to pick very closely.
Yes.
And like be very specific. Like there's a reason I never turned into like a gallery artist. Like that was never appealing to me. Not because I don't like gallery art. Like I have friends that are like doing amazing shit and like amazing galleries. Absolutely. I love them. They're living it up. But I think of it in the same line of like in activism where everyone has a different role.
Yes.
And they all contribute to the same point and the same cause. Like you don't have to be an organizer to be contributing in activism. And I think that parallels with what people assume creatives do. As like, if you're not in galleries, what are you contributing? So for me, I realized like in school, I was like, okay, I don't want to curate a show. I want to curate of my own stuff. I love to curate shows of like my students and stuff. Like I want to boost their visibility. And again, not shit talking people where that's not their jam, but like for me, I more want to bring like that higher academic, whatever prestige and shit to people that don't have access to that, rather than bring the visibility of those people to that prestigious academy. They're both valid forms of activism in terms of creativity, but like for me, I'm like, that's the struggle I choose. I do not want logistics, permanence, paperwork,
the jargon.
Oh
my gosh. So. I can't stand it. It took me so long to figure out like my place in the art world.
Canon? Is it in the canon?
I really struggled.
Like pirates? Where are you in the canon?
All right. Like, because so much of what was taught like in school is just geared towards that like fine art, like through that fine art lens, and like looking at art history, a lot of it was like European art history and stuff.
Don't ask me about art history. It's the same as
I'm not going to.
When people try to like level up to me or like size me up with art history, I'm like, bro, you win by default. Like, I don't care. Like, I really.
I know. I like. It's some of it can be like interesting to see how we got from certain styles to like what people are making today. It's kind of it's interesting in a way, but but I struggled for so long, and there were even teachers who were like, well, if you want to make a career for yourself, maybe you should come to these gallery openings and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, but I am doing things. You don't see them because I'm doing them at markets. I'm doing them in like my own my house, like because I just cannot stand a lot of times the culture that can come with the gallery space, because a lot of it is like, again, that like convoluted jargon and like, what are we actually talking about here? And like, I don't know, just the aura. I'm just like, I feel like I'm out of place. I feel like I don't belong in this space. I would much rather be like facilitating a class, like a lino cut class. Because like, I feel like so much, I'm sure important conversations come out of gallery spaces too. But I just
quietly,
feel like,
you can't even yell in there.
Right? What the hell? That's not fun. So it's just like, I feel like I have such important conversations with people when like I'm teaching something, especially because people are like so in their work, like what they're doing, like there's not that pressure of looking someone in the eye or like that kind of thing. So I think it's a lot, people tend to like open up a lot more, or like talk about, they get more comfortable because there's not that pressure.
It's an interactive fidget that they're also engaged with. That like brings that edge down. Like there's somewhere to look, there's something to do with your hands or not do with your hands.
And I just feel like, I don't know, the gallery spaces, there's plenty of people who didn't go through art school or like are not artists or anything like that who are afraid to enter galleries.
Yeah.
Because they feel like they don't know enough, they are not enough. And it's like...
Yeah. And those are the folks that I like resonate the most
Same.
with. So I'm like, if they're not gonna see it, I don't know what I'm gonna look at.
And it's like, I don't think I can blame them, because like sometimes when you go into galleries, it's just like empty. There's no one else there, especially if it's like during visiting hours and not like during an opening or closing. It's like, I would be intimidated too, you know, especially when you feel like you have to be a certain way or
dress a certain way,
talk a certain way.
Yeah.
It's like, why are we... Oh, and I mean, I know why, but it's like, I don't need it. I don't need this. And like, people have been telling me my whole life that like I need to aspire to do this and be this, and it's just like, I don't know, like not doing it anymore.
It's like assuming what your goals or like your max
like you said,
capabilities are too. That if you're not in those spaces, you're not good enough to be in those spaces. Man, if I could tell you how many times my dad was like, "You could be in this museum.
know.
You could be." I'm like, "You're right."
I do not care.
I was like, maybe. I don't know, but like, I'm not gonna find out.
Yeah.
I'm
do
not
I
gonna
want
find
that
out.
for myself?
Yeah. Again, not like they're all horrible, blah blah blah.
Sure.
But I have to exist in so many different institutions as it is.
Exactly. I'm
Especially
tired.
Because my favorite like population or demographic or what have you is like incarcerated adolescents. That is a big institution. I'm like, I don't have the energy in me to navigate another institution that I don't agree with or that has a hierarchy when I'm already contending with this one, and being a buffer as a facilitator. Which brings me back, I guess, to the uppercut thing, that something else that I've been enjoying about doing the markets is the interaction with people.
Yeah.
And like, because my work is not for everyone as well as like with everything else that I've ever done, I'm like, oh, okay, because it's like, how hard am I gonna lean into the anarchy? Like, I just keep going with the aesthetic. I'm like, but these are legitimately things that I like the aesthetic of. Like, I align with like the politics of punk. Like, I've always enjoyed the aesthetics of that culture, subcultures in general, or like my favorite cultures. I couldn't say that probably in certain circles, but
I know what you
know what I mean.
I know
what I mean.
I know what you mean.
No one's getting canceled today.
No.
So
words.
Yeah, words. But yeah, in terms of like the words and stuff, speaking of that, like if people pass my booth, like I don't like doing Gen Pop markets, because like if it's a family friendly event, my black and gold and like my barbed wire things and my little chain link fence and like, you know, the whole flames and the snakes and all this stuff, like to me that's exciting and fun. But like middle-aged, you know, more conservative quote and unquote parent would not bring their child into my tent. And I've seen it. I've seen people judge from far away. But it's always worth it for the interactions where people see something and they're like, oh,
I love this.
Oh yeah, I know what that is. Like, I know what it is. It's always the lefties too. The lefties and the queers that are like, oh, I know what you mean by that. Like, I've seen, and I think that the subtlety, like if I was like to critique in like a high art way, like what I do right now, for me, it's the balance of subtlety and smacks in the face. Like, you can tell that what I'm saying or doing or conveying is supposed to be a slap in someone's face. But if you don't know who it is, it's probably you. Yeah. So like I've had people with like the surviving despite and to spite one. They'll come up and they're like, despite what? And I'm like,
oh, sweetie.
I know. I'm like, well,
don't worry about it.
Don't you even worry. This is not for you. Like, don't even fret your head off. Like, I was like, you know, gestures broadly to all of Florida. And then like gestures a little bit slightly farther north and then like engulfs the world. You know, there's a lot. And so I kind of see it as like a dual blessing that like people are turned off. That I wouldn't want to buy my stuff anyway. And it's the same as like the YouTube channel. Like,
take it or leave
YouTube is the worst for hateful comments. I knew that going into it, and oh boy, it's true. But yeah, it's like this assumption that if you're creating something that people can consume with their eyes or their minds, that it's for everyone's consumption. And like I see that as like a direct tie into like consumerism in itself, where it's like, if you have a consumable good, you need to make it marketable to as many people as possible for it to be like seen as like productive. And for me, I'm like, that is the opposite of what I do not like. I've definitely had like this.
I know my audience.
This you know, to not get into details, this person that I didn't want to have my stuff anyway, called into question something that I posted, because I'm also proudly like identifying as a storyteller and a shit talker.
Yes.
Equal parts. So I'm not bashful online.
No.
Which is really it's funny. Sometimes, and sometimes I'm like, oh man, who's gonna hate me today? But then who loves and like shows so much love too? There was somebody I didn't want to buy my work anyways, and they came at me online with like, oh, but like, is it the point that you want more people to buy it? And I was like, it's actually not. Like, I'm glad you brought up that is your idea of what I'm doing, so that I can stop you right there, be like, I do not depend on your support. Like, I know it's slim pickings out here for resources, but I don't want it if it's not for me.
Yeah.
Like, that could be for someone else.
Yep.
That needs it in a different way.
Yep.
And like, that scarcity mindset has been something I've struggled with for a long
Me
time.
too.
Where, you know, fucking crabs in a bucket mentality that you see in artist communities too. We don't have to get into that, but you know, it's fair and valid to feel that way when everything around you is set up to create that competition.
Exactly.
But doing that, like, you know, being more invested in community care and making sure that others get those opportunities too. I could remember like a decade ago, like if I saw an opportunity that I really liked, didn't really like fit what I was doing, but I wanted it, like I wouldn't share it with anyone. It'd be like, oh, less competition, I'll just apply for it and then, you know, not let anyone know. Hopefully I'll get it. Versus now, if I see something, I'm like, that's appealing, but not what sparks joy for me. I would probably
I know someone who will.
And I know someone who will. I know someone who matches that Mark's like theme or like the vibe they're going for, whatever. And I'm like super happy to share it now.
Yeah. That's great. And I think it's important. Like, that's one thing actually in school that I'm really grateful for. I feel like a lot of the class I was in was like, there was that sense of camaraderie where like people were helping each other and like doing late nights in the studios together and stuff to help the other person complete the project. And I'm just like, this doesn't feel normal. Because I feel like I've just like learning, because it even took me so long to even like major like in art. Like I did like many different routes before I finally was just like, fuck it, I don't like anything else. If I'm gonna be a quote unquote starving artist, like everyone in my small town said, so be it, because literally nothing else is working. But I'm also so grateful that I ended up going to school, even though it's like, well, blah blah blah, you don't need to go, because it's like I've met so many great people, like even a lot of people I'm still friends with, even though we graduated like 5 years ago now. And there's still that like sense of community of like people sending each other opportunities and working together like just for fun. And it's like, that's so cool, because so many other schools, especially like proper like art schools like SCAD or something, I've heard horror stories of like the competition and people like, there was one friend that I had who went to Pratt, and she said that like there was some person who like ruined another person's and I'm just like ruined their painting.
So I had a very different experience than you.
Oh shit.
Like, like when you're saying about the camaraderie and stuff, I'm like, I
didn't really feel that.
No, I went to RISD. So
there it is.
There
it is.
Yeah, so it was very like, and that's the thing, like people only see the privilege in that.
Right.
Of like, whoa, you went to this event. I'm like, listen, I didn't even know it was prestigious. Literally until I was going there and I was at a bus stop and I had my hoodie on and they were like, oh, you go to RISD? And I was like, why the fuck does everybody know about this school? I'm like, I'm just trying to like ride to work or whatever. And like, like people of different, like it took me literally into like my first semester. I was like, oh, this place is known. And then I went back to like trying to read, which is what I'm saying. Like I feel people assume that I know what I'm doing a lot of the time, and I'm like, I really fall into things, and I'm like, oops, oh, this is really cool. Like the reason I applied there was because they had ceramics, jewelry, and glass. That was the only reason
right.
that I applied to that school.
Right.
So,
I applied to UT.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a private school.
Yeah.
So I feel you. I didn't know. My parents didn't go to college, so
Yeah.
they just really wanted me to go to college. So I'm like, okay, I'll apply for these three schools.
Yeah.
One of them was UT, private school. Could not afford that.
Yeah.
Second one was Florida Southern, which apparently is like super Christian or something.
I mean, it sounds like it.
So didn't know that. That's in Lakeland. That's the school in Lakeland. And then the other one was New College.
Yeah.
And I got
Rest
into
in peace.
I know. I know. I ended up going to New College for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
But that school ended up being a little too small for my anxiety. But
yeah. I transferred to RISD from Barry in Miami. So I was in Miami for 2 years and then transferred to RISD.
The other.
But yeah, I was not prepared. I was not prepared. I was like, oh, this is a big deal. And everyone was like,
Didn't
yeah,
know
you
it.
idiot. Like, how'd you not know? Did you not Google? I was like, yeah, I was looking for these things because like prestige and like hierarchy and things just aren't on my radar. And
me
like, it doesn't
either.
cross to me.
I don't understand.
So like, you know, we did have like students from SCAD or from Pratt that would come and they would like burn the fuck out and they'd be like, fuck this, I'm going back because this is nonsense. And I was like, you right. I'm gonna stay. I'm a glutton for punishment, so I'm gonna stay. But like people would always be like, oh, RISD's like the Harvard of art schools. They'd say it all the time. And my thing was always like, you are right because the suicide rates are just as high. It was bad.
I didn't
because,
know
like,
that. Is it just like the pressure of it all?
The freshman year kids, especially, there'd be at least 1 to 2 cases a year. But it was like that level of competitive.
Yeah.
Like, there was no camaraderie. Like you had to pull teeth. Like I had very like
That's not fun.
I had antagonist. Yeah, no, it wasn't. But like the people that went there knowing what it was, unlike me, the people that went there knowing what it was and why they were going there, amazing humans. Like the work they do, their brains are like geniuses. Like I did also encounter a lot of people with old money that were great, and some that were like totally fit the archetype.
That definitely reminds me of New College too.
Yeah. Like they had the little like thing where it's like, oh, stand up if you fall into this category, but whatever. They literally were like upper class, whatever, something. They didn't say upper class, but it was like inherited wealth of like, it could have even been like freaking like if you're a prince or a princess in another country or something like that, like something to that level. And there was like the majority of people were in that caliber. There was very little of us like working class ones. So it was very different from Miami, where Miami, it was like a general college experience. Like I got to do social things. I was in a dance team. Like it was very cultural. Like I was like a medium shade to a lighter shade than everybody. I went up there. I was like one of the darker shades. It was complete flip. So that definitely informed a lot of my thinking and the things that I knew that I didn't agree with or that I pushed against. And that's why I really loved having no ceramics in my final show for my ceramic department. And they're just like, thank you for this slap in the face, Elle. You know, I was just
You're
like,
welcome.
I found my voice and it's not in this medium. You know, which is also interesting that people assume that if you major in a certain medium, that is the only medium you'll ever use.
Right.
Because I know some amazing friends that were like design and stuff that now do like super crazy stuff in ceramics, and I'm like, I told you you'd be so good at it. And I'm like, look at you go.
Aww.
You know?
Yeah.
So
that's sweet.
But yeah, so that's, you know, it's again the privilege and oppression conversation of like going there. It's like, you know, that's also why I don't lead by telling people that I graduated from there, because there's automatically an assumption that I'm going to be an asshole, first of all. And then second of all, I'm like, I'm going to be an asshole, but not about the things you think. You know, and then the assumption and then the pressure of like, well, if you graduated from there, why are you not touring internationally and doing all these things? And for me, I was like, that does not bring me joy whatsoever. Like I actually hate setting my stuff up in a visible space. Like, but that's why I like the markets, because I'm like, boop, pop up some stuff, all right, take it down, all right, back to the next, and giving things to people. Like you were saying, you know, you had an instructor that didn't value the work you were doing outside of class that wasn't like a gallery. Like when I was in school, I was doing these larger sculptures. They were really great, like allegorical, like amazing sculptures, whatever. But I'm like, where the hell am I gonna put these things? Like, who is gonna be able to afford this big ass sheep in wolf's clothing and put it in their house and have room for it and like that kind of art? Like, it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And so I remember like the critiques were very, very intense. Like,
I'm sure.
Like in your first year, if you transferred, you had to do a summer intensive. And it was like academic hazing. Like it was incredibly difficult. My IBS came back. Like everyone cried at least at one critique. You know? And like they would just like shred you. It was really horrible. But like I also got from that of being like, somebody's always gonna have a problem with what I do or what I say. What matters to me is what kind of person they are.
Yep.
Like if somebody has a problem with what I'm saying or what I'm doing, and I don't align with them at all, I'm like, perfect, I am doing the right thing. But if, you know, somebody has a problem and they're in like a disadvantaged position to me, then I'm like, okay, let me take this into consideration, see what I can do to adjust and like, you know, be more accommodating of more perspectives that are important to be heard. But I remember a critique, and I was making these little, I still have them, these little I guess little stones, and I would hand them out to different like strangers and like have conversations with them, and then like take a picture of their hand and like have an Instagram where I just kind of like documented the interaction and stuff. And there were like little messages of metta, which is like Buddhist loving kindness. And I like mentioned that in the critique. They're like, okay, anyways, getting back to your real work. And I was like, this is my real. I was like, I want to do this more than anything else. They're like, I mean, that's a fun project, and I was like, well, this makes more sense to me as meaningful work.
Yeah,
more people get to have this. They get to own this for free. Like, nobody's gonna be able to own this thing besides my dad, because he won't let it go. But like, you know, it's those perceived like privileges as well as like advantages is always something that I'm like contending with, and that affects like what information I give people too.
Yeah, totally.
As well. So that's definitely why like my family's always like, oh, put it on there that you went to. I was like, I don't want to, because they're gonna think that I'm an entitled asshole.
Sure.
And I'm like, I'm gonna be entitled, but because I know that like there's been some severe suffering. But like not entitled to where I want to take things that are not mine to own.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I love that. I love all that, because I just feel like, I don't know. I think it's really important that you don't lose yourself, like, within all of those, like, expectations and, like, assumptions. Like, that can be really fucking hard to do, to, like, not lose yourself in that. But it seems like you have a pretty high self-awareness.
If there's one thing I have, it is self-awareness.
So much so that I have hell anxiety.
Right? Yeah, I'm like...
I literally see people sometimes do things, and I'm just like, how are you navigating the world? Because I just feel like I'm constantly, like, looking around, making sure I'm not in anyone's way. And then you just are doing these things where you're just, like, in people's way, and, like...
No spatial awareness.
No spatial awareness whatsoever. And I'm just
I do admit, I rag on my spouse and my mom all the time about that, because they're super clumsy. And they just, like, they move slowly, but still too fast for themselves, and knock things over. And I'm like,
how are you
aware
doing
of your
this?
Surroundings. And,
I know.
But it also comes with being an instructor or a facilitator.
That's true.
Too,
That's
of, like,
true.
reading people and accommodating and making sure that, like, everyone's doing okay. Like,
that's
not everybody
true.
has to be comfortable. Discomfort is okay.
Yeah.
But, like, as long as everybody's safe.
That's that's interesting. I never thought about it that way, but that's probably totally, like, part of it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because definitely I have that, like, teacher and, like, always trying to make sure everyone. And whenever I host, like, a party or something, I'm like, is everybody having a good time? Or, like, if I'm with people who are, like, drinking, I don't really drink, so if I'm with people who are drinking, I'm like, do you need some water? You know, I become everybody's like, oh, the mom, you know, and I drive everyone home. So yeah, that's probably part of it. I never thought about it that way, but it was funny. And then, so you've talked some about UPPERCUTT and, like, kind of how you got to that point, but like, you've worn many hats as an artist. as an advocate, you've been a teacher, you've done ceramics, sculpture, performance I didn't know about, embroidery.
Yeah. It was in my cis body, so that's why nobody gets to see that, because I'm like,
true, that's fair.
Nobody needs to see the little titties that I had.
Sure,
but like,
that's
fair.
Yeah. And printmaking, you've done a lot.
Which is interesting, because this is the first time that I've ever made stuff with the intention of selling it.
Yeah.
Ever.
True that. Especially with like, that's the whole point of it.
Yeah, the whole point is like an experience, right? And like to make things and be like, I hope this sells, has never been on my thing. But that's why like I passed out prints at a community picnic first and saw people's reaction. I was like, oh, I should make more of these. And then like, oh, maybe I'd sell some or what. And that's like literally where it spun off from, was just like making these little prints of things that I wanted to yell at people. Yeah. And I was like, other people want to yell this at other people too. I know it is Florida and like, to Satan and shit like that. And it's May, now it's April, and like it was in the heat of everything. So I was like, I'll pass these out so people can be like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. They can wear it, they can post it somewhere or whatever. Yeah. So it's been like a delight to like make things that are angry and be like, and I know you feel it too. Can we celebrate that anger is a valid emotion together?
Yes, seriously.
And, like, we don't hold space for anger.
No.
Because people want to fix anything, everything. And part of like me going into I was going into therapy and counseling was having to sit with people not being okay. And not taking that personally, like you're not helping them, just knowing that that's something they have to go through. Yeah. And like being okay not giving them the solution. Like you can't give people solutions to something that you haven't experienced. And like that subjectivity is something that really drives me too, to like keep expanding and knowing other people's experiences, and then finding words that fit those and being like, yo, this is kind of what I think you're saying, but in like 3 words. Yeah. Like, does that feel right to you? And when I hit it on the head, they're like, oh my God, that's exactly. And I'm like, I love words. And then like, the word nerd in me is like very pleased with like my alliteration and my puns specifically.
And you should be.
Right, yeah.
They're great. But I wanted to ask, I'll ask you about some specific pieces, but now that you're making work under UPPERCUTT, like what drives your process? And you've already kind of talked about it, but like, I guess I can start from a specific piece. That shirt that you're wearing right now, actually, the Take Care. So like, yes. And again, you've already kind of gone through it, but like, could you walk us kind of through the process a little bit?
This one was definitely. So Take Care. First of all, actually, UPPERCUTT was inspired by stand-up comedy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because there's the saying that you always punch up, not down.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I came up with UPPERCUTT. I was like, I love UPPERCUTT. I was boxing for a little period of time, so I was like, UPPERCUTT, that's how I feel all the time.
That's cool.
But yeah, so the Take Care one, it was like at the heated, like the highest peak, I would say, in the trans community of being like, oh, we're going to be fucked in this state because of this idiot. And I'm like, not to be ableist, but he's an idiot. So I was like, I just love plays on words. Like I love like dual meanings and stuff. And like, I feel like words don't have to be different in order to mean different things. Yeah. Like you don't even have to rearrange them.
Especially in English.
Yes. And all you need is like a different context. Yeah. So like with the Take Care, like for me, it was like kind of going back to that meta, that loving kindness of like wanting to give that love out to other people, but not in as full of a Buddhist way as I used to, where I was like, in order to be a good Buddhist, I must be a pacifist. I was like, no, actually, like, yes, and. Totally. Pacifism only gets you so far. Yeah, when you're being like directly attacked by things.
Constantly.
Right?
And they don't care.
Yeah.
The other side doesn't care.
I'm not gonna roll on my back. I'm like, unless it's pleasurable, you're not going to find me on my back. So, totally. Fair. So my wish, like, to my community was to take care. I was like, I want care for us, like, and then also like taking is like a powerful word, like to take. We give so much, you know, of our time, of our visibility, of our representation, buying shit that's been marketed to us to help an organization that apparently likes us for some reason, probably the money. You know, there's been so much taken from the community as more of this awareness has become spread. I know that, like, when, I don't know what the timeline was, but like people were more aware of trans people. Not Sasquatch. There's a lot of us. If we are, we're like a herd of Sasquatch. So I remember, like, when it became more of like a visibility thing where they were like, oh yeah, like more people are aware of transness. I was like, well, this is not going to be good. Like, just because they're aware doesn't mean they're going to like it. Like, I know lots of people in my hometown that like became aware of me or things about me and do not like it. Them being aware did not solve anything.
Right.
So when this awareness was coming higher and higher in Florida with the state and like ramping things up, I was like, oh, here we fucking go. It's gonna have so many little cheerleaders out there, you know, in their ripped jeans, which, you know, I can't shit on it because I like ripped jeans too. But yeah, I was like, I want us to take the care. Like, I want to take care. And I was also thinking about like people that I know, not personally, but like from a distance, that like provide like medical care or harm reduction. You know, at the protest, like, that was very important, was to have somebody that could give that care without the institution of like medical industrial complex. So for me, taking care was like a well wish, but it was also like a demand for revolt.
Yeah.
Of, like, we have to take that care for ourselves. Like, we have to learn how to do those things for ourselves, for each other, because these larger institutions that are thriving off of our dissemination are not going to be the ultimate saving grace. And so, of course, I was like, take care. I love that it's such a gentle, soft, very commonly said thing. And I was like, but I want to like twist its nipples.
Yeah.
You know, like, I just want to like tweak it just a little bit. So that's why I was like, I'm going to look up the medical symbol. And then I was like, okay, the snake's like, how does anyone not think that's a demonic sign? Like, I know background of some of it is like Abrahamic and stuff. I'm like, still, like, you know, you chose that snake, bro. You chose that snake to be the representation of healing. Like, now you're gonna have to deal with me owning that and making them as demonic as possible. And like, and there's gonna be 2 of them. And there's gonna be fire. And like, I remembered, I was like, I knew that like the top of the little I'm gonna like fuck with the mic now.
Oh, it's okay.
The top here, the midst of my sternum, had like the little medieval like wrecking ball kind of guy, like with the pokes, and I was like, yo, an angel wings? What? Like spiky angel wings? Like, angels are pretty, you know, I grew up Catholic, which most people are like, you poor thing, but I'm also like, yo, the allegories in Catholicism, like,
they go hard.
Storytelling, the shit talking, like, all the things I love. I'm like, that's where I got it from. That's what I got. That's what I got out of Catholicism. How to tell stories and how to talk shit. Like, I love it for that.
That's really funny.
So like, I really do in a way think of like these like biblical allegories of like what's evil and what's good, and then I like enjoy being like, oh, bitch, you thought that like
splicing it.
You being like a bigot to all of these communities is doing this kind of spiritual work, but really, if you actually looked at it, you know, it'd be the opposite of what you're saying and what you're doing. So like the spiky wings, the 2 snakes, and I remembered like the space around the snakes, and I was like looking at it and I was like, would it be too much if I added flames? And I was like, I feel like if I go too far, it's gonna be like, oh, cheesy. And
sure.
I was like, but I was like, I think it'll be okay. I was like, listen, if I hate because lino cut, you could just carve it out. I was like, I'll just take those bitches out and it'll be fine. So then I did it, and I was like, oh no, I love this composition. Yeah. And I love working within limitations. So the only linoleum size big one that I could find at the time was like the 9x12 or something. So I was like, awesome, I have a template. I have to fit it within this. Process wise, I freehand a lot of the time, and like people don't like that about me as an instructor. Because they're like, how is anybody gonna learn if you don't like give them a template? This stuff, I'm like, use their brain, use their imagination. So I do templates sometimes, but I always encourage people to like do what they really want to do and not what they think it needs to look like. So like I like with all of my words that I do, I'll literally like go on DeFont and like type up the thing, whatever, flip it backwards on my phone, and I'll just look at it and I'll get a ruler, and I'll be like, all right, 4 inches for each letter. All right, let's hit it. And then I'll like start sketching it out, and then I'll be like, oh, I'll do this, whatever. So a lot of the times, I literally see the design backwards before I see it forwards.
Yeah.
Which I think is really fun and cool. And I know there's like folks that are like, I work smarter, not harder. I'm like, as long as I'm having fun while I'm working, I don't really care. Like we were talking about, you know, art history and being like, oh, that's how they did it back then. I'm always way more interested in doing a process in the most Neanderthalic prehistoric way. Like, I'm like, that's like so like
bringing it back to the basics.
Yeah, because if we think about like the societies that were happening at that time, they were more back to the basics in a lot of ways.
They didn't
that
have
connection with materials, that direct contact with materials, with your hands, with one, you know, item that's 6 inches away from that item that you're working on, and you're having this direct contact. To me, that was like so cathartic and beautiful, which is also why I only do my little monotone prints, because I'm like, I'm not trying to get that deep with it. I'm not a graphic designer. People ask me to design shirts for them. I'm like, I'm not the one. I will point you towards people that can. I was like, 'cause I don't feel like I need to fill everything as a person, as a business.
You don't have to be everything.
So anyway, the take care was very much of like, in a way, like saying that we have to take care from the medical industrial complex, and like seeing the medical industrial complex for like the not always evil, but like innate evil of capitalizing on people's pain that it is, and then also being like, take care, like it's hard. You know, like, I see what you're facing, but like these snakes could also be us going up to strangle those motherfuckers and like rip their wings off, basilisk style. So like, you know, we don't support her, but no. I literally had like a Cerberus made out of needle felt, and it was all brown.
Oh, good.
And people were like, oh, is it because it's a Harry Potter dog? And I was like, oh. And I immediately like changed its markings, added black. I was like, this thing's gonna be a Doberman now. Yeah. But it was like the dimensions were like the same as me. It was like all torso, short arms and legs. So I was like, okay, it's more like a dachshund now, but like, you know, the energy's still there. Like I consider myself a merging of Pinscher and dachshund too. So but yeah, so we don't support her. But anyway, that's how I came up with this one. And then I did like the trans tie-dye version for Pride Month.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I was like, look, if those corporations can monetize on our minority status, I will monetize on my own. Like, I'm not afraid to like whip the identities out and be like, pity me. Because you should. You should.
It's
like, shit
hard
is
out
rough.
here.
Like, a big part of like decolonizing my mind was being like, I do deserve good shit. Like, you know, I'm not afraid to be entitled to certain spaces and things like that. Because I'm like, when people that are told that they don't deserve things feel entitled, they're not just feeling entitled, they are entitled. There's like a big difference between like someone that feels entitled to everything and someone that is entitled inherently by who they are. So I definitely was like, put some baby blue, put some baby pink. All right, look, and it's by me, one of them. Like, so monetize me instead of all these other things that are like claiming to help us, but like just because we're anti-capitalist doesn't mean that we don't need that capital to survive.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's the best thing you can do, is put money towards people that are trying to put people over profits.
Yeah, because I mean, like, people are gonna survive. People are gonna spend the money anyway, and it's like, would you rather buy, and not to knock anyone or anything, and maybe there might be designers, but like, and also like, I know sizing can be an issue sometimes too. Like, some places carry more sizes. It's like blah blah blah. But like, me personally, I'm like, well, would I rather, like, if I had some money to spend and it was like Pride Month, would I want to give it to Target and their Pride collection, or would I want to give that money directly to someone who is part of that community? And like, again, it's like, I know that the $20 I give you is going to rent. It's going to go to food. It's going to go to gas money and stuff like that. Whereas like Target, it's like maybe like some of that money is going to go to the people who work there, but like a lot of it gets funneled to the top, to the CEO, who I don't know what they look like, but I'm sure it's a white guy.
Yeah.
Like an old white guy.
It's actually the dog. Like, with the spot.
Honestly,
He's like,
in that case, no, I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
right? I know. I would be all over it.
Yeah.
No. I know. I love their little flat snouts.
I know, it's so cute.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think it's, like, really important. And that's one thing, too, that I can't stand is, like, when people start complaining about, like, oh, like, you critique capitalism all the time, but, like...
But then you need money to live?
Hello?
I
like,
know.
we live in... I can critique the thing that I live in.
It's because of the thing that I was critiquing that I need this now.
It's like if... Like, we all are living under... Like, if... Just take it as another example. It's like, people complain all the time about Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. He's still your president. Like, yeah, but you can still critique.
Yeah.
You can still critique
Criticizing isn't demonizing. I mean, it can be, but it's not that you don't need it just because it sucks.
Right.
Things suck all the time that you need.
But, like, I need food, I need water, I need shelter. What the hell? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, and then it's like the whole thing of like, oh, if you hate Florida so much, just move out. And then it goes back to the whole thing of like, okay, can you give me like at least $6,000 at the very minimum to move out of the state, so that I can pay my deposit, I can pay the first month's rent, I can rent a moving truck.
Yeah.
Like,
I know people.
Hello.
Like, I know it's well-meaning.
Yes,
that
exactly.
That one, of like, find the places, live in the places that bring out the softness in you, not the survival in you. I'm like, bitch, you got softness in me, money? Because I cannot afford to live in the places that let me be soft. They're too expensive. That privilege and security is expensive.
It is certainly.
It is very expensive.
It is.
And, like, additionally, about people that are like, just leave Florida. Then there's also the people that I've noticed that are like, if you leave Florida, you're not a real one. You gotta stay here and go down with the ship. And I'm like, no. Like, that would have worked for me 5 years ago, still with that saviorist mentality. But I was like, if I go down with this shit, how am I gonna lifeboat anybody else? Like, it's pointless to be like, I survived and then died because I survived and stayed in this place. If you have an ability to move, like, I never shame people that are like, I'm out of here. I'm like,
me either.
Fair. Like,
it makes me sad.
Yeah.
But
I'm like ultimately happy
like,
for them. I'm not gonna be like, how dare you do this to me?
Keep your peace.
Like, you don't owe me anything.
No.
Like, your own safety is super important, and like, sustainability is important too. And like, people think that sustainability is like just growing a garden.
Right.
But like,
so much
sustainability, like, you gotta take care of that garden every day. Are you gonna be able to maintain a huge ass plot by yourself? Or can you only manage like a basil leaf?
Right.
Right. Like, yeah. I mean, you can have these like higher goals of achievement, but you also have to be realistic with like your own body.
Yeah, seriously.
Seriously.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that like I've kind of learned throughout the years too. It's like, and I'm also like unlearning in therapy of like, it's okay to like take time for yourself to heal. Like, you don't have to be doing things for people all the time. Like, even though you see everything, because like, especially like a few months ago when I first started back into therapy, I was I was super angry. I'm still mad, but like I was super to the point where I couldn't control it, kind of thing. Like, I was like lashing out.
Oh, I've been through anger management twice.
Yeah.
Well, I put myself through it. It wasn't even court ordered. I was just like, listen, buddy, I'd like to kill the cop in my head, but you need to go to anger management.
Yeah. I was really angry and like also just really full of despair and like looking all around me, and it just feels like everything is like falling apart. And at the same time, I was restarting my meds, and I was just like I didn't have energy, and I was just like looking at everything around me and just feeling like helpless. And like, I wanted to do more to help, the community in some way, whether it be like something more hands-on, or even just like the act of hosting an event that could be like a healing thing, a lot of queer expressions, like events and stuff are.
But that's gas to go out there.
Yeah,
that's unpaid volunteer labor
totally.
of your skill set that takes a lot of your brain, and your body.
Yeah.
And you're being aware of everybody's body language, and everybody there is already traumatized from the same shit that's traumatizing you.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's been kind of this conversation of like, you need to take care of yourself, and it's okay to take care of yourself and like reclaim like that energy that you've been giving out, you know, to people for like years now. And like, you don't have to feel guilty for doing that. Yeah. And I'm just like, damn, like I know all of that, I know it, but it's just so much harder to like put into practice of like, okay, I'm gonna chill because I'm like regain my energy because I've just been going. Got out of school, got a job, kept going. Like without any kind of like real break. And I've moved several times too. So it's like just all of these things where I finally just got to a crashing point like earlier in the beginning of this year, and just that's basically what I'm just trying to learn, like, you know, just constantly learning to be like, it's okay, like you don't have to do everything and you don't have to be everything for anyone. Like
honestly, even for yourself as a creative.
Exactly.
Because I won't speak for you, I'll speak for myself, but like that shame, like for me, it's the shame of not being technologically savvy. I'm like, because I always get that from people where they're like, well, is there an easier way to do what you're doing? I'm like, probably, but would it be enjoyable to me? Probably not. Like, you know, and for me, like, it's that like idea of like, well, you have to monetize as fast as possible. So you need to find the most efficient ways. And so many people have been like, oh, so do you order out your shirts for screen printing? I'm like, if I hear one more person call me a screen printer, there's nothing wrong with screen printing. But it's like when I did ceramics and everyone called me a potter. I was like, would you stop assuming that I do what everyone else in this medium does? Like, just because it's printed on fabric does not mean there was a screen involved. Just because it was made out of clay doesn't mean that there's a handle involved, or that you can drink out of it, or that it can hold water.
Or that it's functional.
Like, or that it's functional at all. I was a very non-functional ceramicist.
Same.
And that's why I hated when people called me a potter. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with potters. They make bank. Like, they found their thing. That's cool. That's fine. It's not my thing. And like, I don't want to take a commission to do something that I don't want to do.
Exactly.
Like,
I'm the same way.
I'll go do a regular job that I don't want to do, that doesn't make me feel exploited for like things I don't want to do. But yeah, anyway, I thought that was a tangent.
Oh, no, it's okay. That's what this is all about.
Yes.
Well, just to save on time, I'll just talk about one other piece. This Little Light of Mine print. Yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, first I want to know why you chose that one.
Because number one, I think it's funny.
Yeah.
And number two, I just feel like, I guess I just have it like June and July of 2020 burned into my brain of like violence is still happening today, but just like the violence that I witnessed like in the city during all the protesting and everything, and like people getting like people that I know like getting tear gassed and things like that, and like people like having a hard time finding a job after getting arrested and all so that design, like when I first saw it, like when he first posted it, like I don't know, it's just the thing of like the duality of like, oh, this is kind of funny, but also like
that's what I always do. I started
real.
tearing up and now my eye's burning, so I'm gonna wipe my face.
Yeah,
I'm
no
not
problem.
crying yet. Okay. Even if I am, I really don't have any shame about crying, but goddamn.
Oh yeah, me either.
Okay, go ahead. Yes, duality.
Yeah, so that's kind of just why I chose it.
Yeah.
Like
that's honestly been like the one that like brings people to tears, and that's probably why my eyes started watering. I was like thinking about the people that have cried when they saw it, and I was like, I was not prepared, because usually people will have like a you know, like a giggle, or they'll be like, oh shit, oh yeah, like Molotov or whatever, and it is funny, but like that's I think the tie also that I've had with YouTube also, like anything related to words or language. I am not bilingual, trilingual, efficient at all, but like I love language in the idea of like dumbing it down, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not dumbing it down, it's just making it accessible.
Yes,
anybody can understand it.
Like layman's terms.
Yeah, layman's terms. There you go. So like the little light of mine, I'm trying to remember what that one. Normally those things will happen because I'll think of a saying that I really enjoy, or like that I feel like has more meaning than what people have been giving it. And I think it was that one that I would like looked at my spouse and I was like, am I, like clutching the pearls, like, am I an anarchist? I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I've never had anything against anarchy. Like, I've always been like, yeah, I fucking love anarchists. I don't intellectually understand enough to be in. I don't know the literature.
Sure. You don't want to identify with something you maybe don't
that I can't
have
defend
a full understanding.
To people that are gonna be like, how dare you?
I totally get that. Yeah.
So like, and that's another reason why like a lot of my stuff is like blunt and subtle at the same time. Like it's up for interpretation, but like my interpretation of it is pretty clear. Like my interpretation of like this little light of mine, like, you know, Christian upbringing and stuff, and which is why more people like are drawn to it or like have an emotional reaction to it, is because so many people have that Christian upbringing of like associating that with like innocence and purity. And like I feel like Christianity ruins innocence and purity.
Absolutely.
Because actual innocence and purity is so amazing. Like actual childlike innocence, having fun. I've never been like okay with having fun.
I know, right?
Until I started making this stuff.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious to me because it's like all seems very angry, and I've had people like, oh, like I thought when I'd meet you that you'd be like standoffish, like a fucking like tattoo shop bro or something because of what I make. And they're like, and you're just like a ball of sunshine. Like you're just really happy to meet people and talk to people. I'm like, I'm not afraid to switch it. Don't get it wrong. Like I will come for you if I have to, but I don't think everybody's deserving of that treatment.
No,
you know, some people are. I ain't gonna lie. But like, if you're coming to me and you're resonating with what I have, like, you're already feeling like shit. Like you already feel that pain. Like if you get it, if you see my stuff and you understand that sentiment, like I'm gonna show like as much love and kindness as I can to you. Because I know what that feels like to like relate to something that is like hilariously tragic. And like humor for me has always been super important. Like,
me too.
I grew up, each one of my family members in my immediate family have a distinct sense of humor. Like humor was always like revered in my family. Some of the humor was not great. Definitely would have got me canceled.
No, true.
Like for sure.
I hear you.
Like back in my days, you know,
it's that small
the
town
young warthog, mentality. You know, there was a lot of stuff going on, but humor was so important to me because you could get messages across in a way that wasn't threatening to people that otherwise would threaten you. So I think like really with a lot of it like has been embracing my wordplay. And like making me feel like I want to like get back into writing and stuff. Like I've been feeling more enthusiastic about writing and being like, damn, like I forgot about this love, which I think art school strips you of because they're like, you're great at this thing, so you're gonna make this thing your whole life, right? And like, you know, and then the shitting on mixed media and stuff. I think, I think my like anti-purist idea or like pedagogy or whatever has really come from also being like that, being like, oh, if it's ceramic, it has to have glaze.
Right.
It doesn't.
It does
like
not
it,
need it.
Who made those rules?
Exactly.
Like the functional people. That's who. Like they're the ones that like this has to serve a purpose. Otherwise, it's useless.
Right.
Like I prefer to make things that are very obviously useless. If it's a 3D medium, I'm like I want you to not be able to do anything but look at it.
Look at it.
Because that's a luxury. And like people with like my intersections don't get to just have luxury items. You know, it has to serve a purpose, much like our bodies. We have to serve a purpose. Otherwise, like, what's the point of us being there?
Right.
But yeah, the little light has definitely become like the favorite.
Yeah.
That in Florida Man, for sure. The little
Man.
I was like, there was a lot of us out here. Goddamn. Because I've run out of like, there's probably been at least 50 of those patches that have gone out into the world. And I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, people love that shit. People love like even like anything that's even slightly vulnerable because it's just like they can a lot of people don't like to be vulnerable. So it's like if you take the chance and be vulnerable, they'll eat that shit up.
Oh yeah,
because they relate to it. They're just not willing to say it.
yeah. That's why I'm always, when people are like, I don't know how to say it, I'm like, just say it. Say it. Like, I get excited. I'm like, say it however you want. I don't care how, like,
hear it.
Not PC, problematic, whatever it sounds like.
We'll work through it.
What words come to your mind? Maybe they're not the right words for everybody, but like, we can workshop what the words are to find something that, you know. I also like helping people with like artist statements and stuff that. Like, that is my jam. When people are like, I don't know how to talk about my thing, I'm like, let me see it. Okay, and how do you feel when you're like, okay, so this is the poetry, you know. I'm like a little AI bot.
True.
But, you know, with hip problems. With like a carnal body. Like, I'm like an AI that has to like constantly feed itself to stay alive. Like, you know. Sucks. Very unproductive AI.
Seriously. This decaying vessel.
Yeah.
I think about that anytime I like get up in the morning and I like wash my face and I'm like rubbing my eyes. I'm just like, I'm dying a little bit every day.
Yeah, that's
I become
me.
so
even
aware.
When my eye was tearing up and then the other one started burning, I'm like, damn, I can't even enjoy a sentimental moment because my eyes are like, they're so dry. You should have never got LASIK back in 2020 or whatever. I'm just like, no, it was worth it. And like, I have to, I'm like, it improved my quality of life, I swear. It's just the dry eyes now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I refer to my body as ancient grains.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So then my friends will be like, oh, some amaranth, some barley. Like, but yeah,
that's good.
So I think, I'm still like chewing through the whole little light of mine thing.
Yeah, that's a lot. I wasn't expecting that people would cry, but totally if it's like
I make it sound like it's a ton of people. It was specifically one, and I've seen some misty eyes 2 other times.
No, sure, that hits. Like, that hits you.
Yeah, I was just like, oh,
especially if you don't expect it.
Yeah, no, they didn't expect it either.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
No,
but,
totally.
Like, I love tears though. Like,
me too.
I am low key like also a sadist, so that might be part of it. but like I love vulnerability. Like,
me too.
I think it's so beautiful.
It is.
And like, I hate that there's so much shame around vulnerability.
Me too.
Because like, a big theme also, so like, you know, the shame and guilt and all that stuff, like the victim and villain thing, the privilege and oppression thing, like those dualities have always been things that I've been like contending with, thinking about, trying to find myself in.
Yeah.
And then like just subjectivity and not aspiring to purity of any sort has been like my saving grace this year.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not in like, I've done different like spiritual like groups or organizations or affiliations or like religions and stuff, and I've gotten like valuable things out of all of them, but this year I haven't been in any. And I thought that meant that the spiritual growth was like, all right, put a bottle, like a cork on that, and we'll work on that some more next year when you find another community of people that you agree with. But it's actually blossomed a lot more, like specifically with this work too, where I'm like, I feel aligned with what I'm doing, because it's, again, sustainable and it's accessible. Like, things are priced at accessible range. Like, I have enough options for people. Like, I pointedly set up my vendor table with like a $5 section, a $10 section, a $15 section. So I'm like, I know me. I'll go to a market and be like, all right, I have this $120
where's
bill.
The cheapest
I'm like,
thing?
oh, this $120 bill. Let me go price everything and then be like,
the
okay, what am I willing to give up? I don't need lotion. No more chapsticks, I swear to God. Like, you know.
Yep. I hate when I go into a booth. And I know there's probably different reasons, but I hate when I go into a booth and nothing's priced.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm just like,
I
don't know how much this is, and I'm afraid that if I ask, they're going to say it's something that's like way out of my price range. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll come back for it later.
Yeah.
Never come back to the booth again.
I always, and like, I think the facilitation part of me loves working in booths because I get to read people and see people. And like, know that like the way I am observing them could be used in a manipulative way.
Exactly.
But actively choosing not to.
Yep.
I will say, with the little light of mine, something that ties that in that I realized last night as I was not sleeping was that I've like generally been in like a much more like perky and social disposition ever since I started making the UPPERCUTT stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm getting that energy out somewhere. That's why. Because whenever I like get inspired by it, it's inspired by anger and angst. And like I love that because I have a bottomless supply. I have a bottomless supply of anger and angst. But they teach you so much. Like anger management. It does. God bless the anger management, but not the teacher. He was a dick. And I couldn't say it because then it would have been like, see, this is why you're here. But like learning that anger is a secondary emotion was like game changing to me.
Yep, that's what we had to talk about.
The anger is the root of the problem, and they were like, no, but like the anger is a reaction to something else.
Yep,
and I think that I love making angry work because that's a more like allowed expression.
You're allowed to sit with it.
You're allowed to
like,
express
in that
anger.
way.
People respect anger and stuff, but adding like those little touches of like take care.
Yeah.
A little light. Like you are still soft, even if you look like a fiery, angry anarchist. Like we also have feelings, and like us having feelings and feeling things so deeply is why we're so angry.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly. I love all of that. That was so nice.
I'm gonna let you I'm like, damn, because when I interview people, I'm like, alright, shut up. Oh, this gonna be so much to edit. No. And I'm like, this is so great, but how am I gonna get it down to 30 minutes? Like,
no, it's totally fine. My one of my interviews with Emiliano went for like 2 hours. I'm like, cool, you got a lot to talk about. That's fine with me. Yeah. I mean, like, it gets all about the conversation.
Give me a soapbox, and I'll like jump on it and do like a tap dance and like bring out my cane and
Yeah, we got time.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that was a really lovely place to end there. But before I open up the door for you to let us know where you can find you and your work, I had asked you if you were aware of any mutual aid right now, mutual aid causes or anything, because I like to do that with every episode. Again, just going back to the community part of it, and if we can, give a little bit of money to somebody who needs it, that I think that's one piece that we can do if we have the ability to do it. So I wanted to give you some time to shout that out, and so maybe the people will be able to open their wallets.
I'm making funky faces because like every part of me wants to be like, shout out 352 Dade City represent. And I'm like, no, that has nothing to do with mutual aid. The only mutual aid I know in my hometown is my grandmother, and she is not findable on social media, so much love to my grandmother. However, she is unreachable for anyone, but the people that you can reach are Queer Expression St. Pete. They do a lot of really great free activities for kids, specifically kids and families. And I think it's really important to focus on that demographic of queerness, because so many different events and stuff are always tailored towards adults.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, we were all children once.
Yeah.
And like, I think, it goes into the whole like prevention part of the piece. That they always say, and like shelters and stuff, like we kept finding these people coming down the river, and they kept coming, and we kept rescuing them, and then someone finally was like, let's go to the end of the river and find why they're falling in. I think it does need to start at childhood specifically. I know for myself, like if I had spaces
that
like
safe
that,
space.
I mean, I was still wearing my brother's clothes anyway when I was a young warthog, but like I would have been wearing them with other kids also wearing them. I would have had language to explain what I was feeling, and I think a thing that people have a misconception of is that like once you feel a certain way about yourself, there's no turning back, but everything is so fluid. Like a kid could be questioning, like they're still questioning. That's still a big part of queerness too, is questioning, not being sure, trying things out. Like the worst that could happen is that you find out you can relate to people in a way you didn't know before. So I think their work is really important. They also really center fun and creativity, which also, as a young one, I think was really important for me to process. I wish I had had a space like that where you know, there were adults that were trauma informed to be like, oh, you know, there's some things we can talk about. So I think that's really important. They're currently fundraising to get a permanent space to hold all of their functions, which is really exciting. They're a third to their goal of 30,000. Last I checked, they got 10,000, which is exciting. They have like different events that are happening, different people hosting fundraisers for them. So direct donations towards them would be great. It is volunteer run, so you're not putting it technically in individual pockets, but you are reaching out to lots of individuals through that community.
Yeah.
And providing like a very valuable service that a lot of larger orgs have tried to do for their own self-aggrandizement, but contributing to queer expression St. Pete is a way better option. If you're giving proceeds of anything, any of your services, definitely donate towards them. It doesn't have to be Pride Month for you to do a special like that where you're donating towards a certain cause that is rainbowed. You don't even have to use rainbows and it can be queer. Shocking hot take. So they are one. Fitz Lane Project is also another one that's really great. They provide funding for, again, youth that need therapeutic services or mental health services. They even recently, without giving away HIPAA issues, helped fund a session that I did that was a creativity service through a mental health group. So they will extend it to things outside of what just, you know, mental health institutions deem as healing or helpful. It doesn't have to fall under a certain criteria. The person doesn't have to have a certain licensure, as long as the child or the young adult is getting, you know, therapeutic benefit from it. It doesn't even have to have the word therapy in it. It just has to be something that's helping them cope with the dumpster fire that we're living in, without making them feel like they are responsible for the gaslighting that is happening as well. So they are also a really great one to contribute to. They help with co-pays, they help with fully paying for things. I have a lovely dear friend that's on the board that's always shouting them out, well, several friends. And yeah, so those are the two that I can think of right now that are contributing directly locally to us all. But I always encourage people also to just keep abreast of different fundraisers for individuals that have specific needs. Online, follow people that post those things. There's a lot of really great creators that I can't name off right now, but just be aware that a lot of creators will do multi-slide posts. You should swipe through all of them every time, because that's usually where those hidden gems of fundraisers are. Yeah,
definitely. Let us know where we can find you.
Here we go with the spelling. So. And
I'll have all the links too.
Thank you. Special shout out to my spouse, who is my IT person, my accountant, my inventory specialist, the person that keeps me on my toes in a technological way, that handles all of my cash, anyways, etc., etc. They have created a Shopify for me that's available in the link of my public Instagram account, so you don't need your own Instagram to find me on Instagram. And my Instagram handle is @_uppercut, spelled with 2 P's and 2 T's, and then another underscore after that. So underscore at the beginning and the end, uppercut, 2 P's, 2 T's is what I like to tell people, very short and sweet. The link tree, that's actually link pop technically, on that account will give you my wish list for equipment that helps me make things in a more efficient way, which is very helpful because I otherwise do not work efficiently at all. And I have the Shopify account on there as well. I keep my timeline basically updated on different markets that I'm going to. I vend in Pasco, Pinellas, and Hillsborough primarily, but also Orange County as well. Always happy to shoot around and find different places. And the thing I most like to get feedback or interaction from my professional business endeavors that I do on eltapiaquan.com. So I will let Mia put the spelling on that one. Because otherwise, I'm afraid that the way I pronounce letters will throw people off.
Okay.
But that's my full, like, actual me as a professional artist that teaches a bunch of different things website, and it shows the different mediums that I teach, the different places that I teach them, and I am also providing virtual services too, specializing in mediums that are more affordable for people. So learning something virtually, so transportation isn't an issue, distance isn't an issue, space isn't an issue. You know, hit me up if you have certain supplies that you're wanting to learn with, or if you have something with you and there's like a theme or a topic you want to cover. You can also find a little bit more of services like that from me through justberooted.com, which is a mental health provider service group that's changing the way that it works right now, but I provide creativity services. They have a I'm going to say wishing well because I don't remember what it's called. Watering fund. They have a watering fund. I'm going to say it with confidence. Now I remembered what the words are. They have a watering fund, so if you can't afford your services, you can be paid, or I can be paid rather, through that to do any sessions with me. There are ones that are multi-tier sessions. There are ones that can be group sessions if you want to do it with a group of people and talk about interpersonal dynamics or issues that you're facing. Think of it as pure support with a creative twist. And I provide those services there as well. So I'll give all of those links to Mia because I am scattered all over the internet. And lastly, if you want to know way too much about me, you can follow my other, like, quote unquote personal account that was my public account until I had to hide my literal ass off of that account from being public. And that is at all.of.l.
EL.
Yes, and that's EL. That will be spelled.
Yes.
That when/if I relaunch the YouTube channel in 2024, that's where all of the YouTube stuff is going to be. So I am scattered, but I really want to find more clients or people or friends to work with in a non-therapeutic way that is just helpful without the legalities and the nuances and quote unquote ethics of being a professional. I'm leaning into the beauty of not having the restriction of licensure. So if anybody wants to learn some cool stuff, like while you sit at home, I am open and available.
Hit them up.
Yep.
Hit them up.
Yep. That's it. All right, that's all my accolades. That's all my accolades. I'm like, as I say that, I'm like, I really need to like condense everything into one.
No,
it's hard. Good. I don't want to be like, yeah, y'all come to me for therapy, and then be like, fuck the police. And, you know, like it helps field the people that I want as clients. Sure. But also, not everyone needs to know.
Yeah. I get that. Aw, well, cool. Thank you so much again for coming on over and letting me pick your brain about all of the stuff you've been doing. It's been such a pleasure. I've had a lot of fun. Usual. Yes. Yeah. Well, thanks again. And I hope that, you know, the markets keep treating you well and that you can keep making stuff that is fun, you know? Like, I mean, like you said, like you've been having, even though the subject matter can be like serious or at least somewhat serious, you said you've been having like the most fun. So
for sure. So that's my tidbit, I think, for like other creatives that are like choosing, and whether you choose to or not to is totally valid, to make work to sell is to find something that is enjoyable. You know,
absolutely.
It sounds, again, like a privileged thing to say, that like you have to have fun while you're doing it, but you will not only hate your work, you will hate yourself. If you do stuff for the appeasement of other people. Like, find something that you really love or that like represents all your values and your feelings and the way you see the world, and then share that with people, and then the right people will obviously be like, yo, that's how I've been feeling since I was 4. And then be like, absolutely.
The authenticity will show through.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff. Thanks again so much. And Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for being here, and we hope to see you on the next one.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.